Welcome to the Housing Sector Podcast. Thank you again for tuning in, and for everyone who's listening at home or in the car, wherever it is you are. People will know from the Housing Sector Podcast that we tend to focus on the resident's perspective and the resident's journey. And today we've got something a little bit different. We've got a landlord, Richard Duvall, and Richard has quite a horror story. Well, I won't put words in his mouth. Richard, thank you very much indeed for joining me today. Let's have a little bit of background. First of all, who are you?
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me on. So, my name is Richard. I'm a tenant. I rent in the property I'm talking to you from today. But I own a one-bed flat in London, and that has a tenant in it. And so, the effect of that is that I'm renting here, and the tenant does not pay rent, and does not refuses to leave. And so I am at the moment paying my rent here, plus my mortgage on the flat that I own, plus unavoidable bills. So that would be water, gas, electric, council tax. Those together exceed my net salary. So I am in a bit of a bind, to be honest.
Okay, so look, let's go back a little bit to the beginning. So you've purchased a one-bedroom flat for yourself to live in, I'm assuming, and we don't need to get into all the personal details. And then for one reason or other, you've decided to rent that out. I believe there was a relationship there, or...
Yeah, so I was living with living at a former partner's house, and so my flat was empty, and I'm not wealthy enough to think that I can just leave a flat completely empty on that one. So I took the decision to rent it out on a very short-term basis, just to see how it would go. I did an initial 4-month agreement with a lady that I found on Spare Room. The relationship subsequently ended. So as of that moment, I was homeless. Obviously, I'm joking, really. I have family, friends, etc. I'm not going to be on the street, but I didn't have anywhere to live. So I said to the tenant, hey, look, at the end of the tenancy, could you please, I need the flat back. And then the day of, she basically texted me and said, sorry, I'm not left. I can't find anywhere else. At that point, I was obviously a bit, well, you have to leave. We've got a contract. And turns out she doesn't have to leave. And the contract doesn't really protect you in that situation. So that was 18 months ago. And she's still there.
So you've used this third-party Spare Room, this third-party app, and she's filled in a contract, and she's agreed to terms and conditions. And one of those terms is that now that tenancy is over, you're not renewing it. Therefore, that agreement is no longer bound, and she has to move out. So what's the loophole here that I'm missing?
No loophole. She just doesn't have to leave. You have to go through a Section 21 process to remove someone from your house. So essentially, a short hold tenancy is not, in reality, is not time limited. You have to go through the courts to remove somebody from a house, is the answer. And so that's what I've been doing.
I mean, it just beggars belief. I mean, the tenancy agreement's come to an end. So what happens if I'd let this out as an Airbnb for a weekend, and then they said they didn't want to go?
Yeah, I mean, but then that's slightly different, because that would be the same as you not leaving a hotel. So then the hotel could remove you.
Right. Okay.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the difference is in reality, because probably there's the loophole there. But it's this now comes under housing law rather than whatever the hotel law would be.
So she's refusing to leave. So you now have to pursue, I'm assuming, some sort of legal action.
Yes. So the error I initially made was that I thought that a 4-month contract would be okay. But I didn't do any of this. This is on me at this point. I didn't do any of this through lawyers or through estate agents or through anybody that would know what they're doing. I did put myself in this situation. So in September of 2024, I spoke to a solicitor, and at this point I have to start spending some money, right? So I had to get advice, and their advice was basically, you're a bit screwed rich. You can't start a Section 21 process until somebody's been in a property for 4 months. So what we did was we gave her a new contract for 6 months, and then made sure that legally I was completely protected. That was the decision that I then took, was to then give her a 6-month contract. So just said, look, stay for another 6 months. I'm not going to try and chuck you out for this time. You stay, try and find somewhere else to live. And in the meantime, I'll obviously have to go rent somewhere, which is what I started to do. And at that point, I had savings. I could sort of manage that process. And so we got the 6-month contract, then ran till April of 2025. So that's 1 year ago today. And at the end of that 6-month contract, I asked my solicitor to give her a Section 21 eviction notice. Now, there's a couple of ways of evicting somebody. You either go a Section 8, which is because of unpaid rent or whatever, or a Section 21, which is a no-fault eviction, which is what the government is removing the ability to do. And so we went down the Section 21 route, and the reason for that is she had not paid rent now and again, so she was probably about 2 months in arrears at the point of April of 2025. As long as you're below 2 months in arrears, you can stay, right, at the point of a hearing. So my risk would be I'd run a Section 8 process, and then she would still be within 2 months, and so she would be able to stay. So we went, let's do a Section 21 process. We've got all of our legals in order. That should be fine. So we did that. So we sent that off to the court. Sent that to her in May of 2025. So that's after the new contract ends. So she's, again, ignored the contract once again. But she's within her rights to do that. There's nothing I can do about that. She then has 2 months to vacate. And at the end of those 2 months, you can apply to the court to say, this person has refused to leave my home. So that's what I did. So in late July of 2025, we sent all of the paperwork off to the court. There's a cost attached to this, of course, so I'm paying for lawyers at this point.
Yeah.
And at the same time, she's paying now and again rent, right? So I'm not ever sure what I'm getting in from her, but I know full well that I've got my mortgage coming out, my rent coming out, and my bills coming out, okay? And that's before I even start talking about food, internet, bills in reality that aren't avoidable, commuting, for example,
Yeah, all within a cost of living crisis,
Yeah. So, and in reality, this is where the everything before that point, I'm going to hold my hands up and say that was my error. Everything from here on out, I'm doing everything that the courts are asking of me that legally I should be doing. So, as of April 2025, she's not leaving again. As of July 2025, we've applied to the court to say, can you please give us an order of possession for the house? I then don't hear anything from the court until October of 2025. So that's 4 months of uncertainty, stress, etc. The other point to mention here is that she's not the best tenant in the world. So the neighbours have complained about antisocial behaviour. I've had to do repairs, etc. Like washing machine broke, things like that. I then arranged to have a new washing machine delivered. On the day that it's delivered, she basically tells me, I can't take delivery today. And I'm like, well, I've paid for it. Curries are coming. What am I supposed to do? Little things like that. It's not, in and of itself, it's not the end of the world, but just taken together with everything else, it's incredibly stressful. So in October of 2025, so what's that, about 6 months ago now, the court said, we've served her with this notice. She has 2 weeks in which to mount a defence to say that she should stay. She doesn't mount a defence. I then apply to the court again for an order of possession. At that point, she completely stops paying. So she hasn't paid any rent since October of 2025. She owes me £18,800 as of today. That's just arrears. That doesn't include penalties, court ordered costs, etc. So my solicitor is then just saying, we're just going to wait. Okay, we're just going to wait for the court to give you an order of possession. We get to January of this year. We still haven't heard anything. We then get a notice from the court, which was Brentford Court, to say, sorry, it's not with us, it's with Wandsworth Court. So they basically sent us paperwork from the wrong court. So both myself and the tenant thought that this was being handled via Brentford Court. Turns out it was being handled by Wandsworth Court. So it's just delay, okay? We then got an order of possession through on the 9th of February, okay? So contract ended April 2025. February 2026, I get an order of possession saying you need to vacate. Pay the court. We're telling you to leave this property by the 26th of February 2026. So it's already nearly a year. She's already not paying. On the 26th of February, she texts me and says, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to wait until bailiffs turn up. Okay. The reason she's saying that, or the reason she says she's saying that, is because the council have said, we're not going to home you unless literally bailiffs are at your door. Otherwise, we consider you to be intentionally homeless. So I then looked into getting bailiffs. The wait for bailiffs is 8 months in London. There's nothing official that will tell you that, but if you search, that's broadly what the wait is. She's not paying. I've not got any money coming in from her. Any expense whatsoever is now debt for me because I've used up all my savings. So I'm borrowing money to cover all of this. And I'm not willing to wait 8 months for a county court bailiff. So I have applied to the court. I did this in early March of 2026, applied to the court for a high court writ to transfer I've applied to the court to transfer my case to the High Court such that I can use a High Court enforcement officer, which is more expensive, but it's quicker. That application, the court has determined that requires a hearing, and that hearing will take place on the 10th of June 2026. At which point, in June 2026, she will owe me £25,600. And there's no guarantee she'll go, the court. I don't know what the court needs a hearing for, because I've presented them with evidence of the antisocial behaviour, of unpaid rent, and of all of the paperwork. I've done everything that the court has asked me, yet here we are. So financially, I don't know that I'll ever recover from this, but fundamentally, I just want my house back, my only home.
Yeah, I mean, surely now she's just trespassing.
It's, I don't know. I'm not no. I've got friends who are lawyers, and none of them know what's going on here because they're not experts in housing law. And in order for me to get that advice, I need to pay for it. But ultimately, this is a civil matter, not a criminal matter. So no, she's not trespassing.
Forgive me, Richard, for sounding, so naive on this. At the 4-month point, she was paying you rent. Was the relationship then quite cordial?
Yeah, it was okay. So initially, she was fine. She was late with the rent, but she paid it. I had complaints from neighbours about smoking indoors. I'd asked her not to. Things had started to deteriorate at that point, but I would still be able to contact her. So yes, they were cordial at that point.
And then you've drawn out an illegal advice. You've drawn up this 6-month contract because that then. Do you think that she knew? I'm assuming this is she. I don't know why. That she knew what she was doing. Do you think she? It seems like there's some background knowledge there. That the 4 months is strange because I've only ever hired in 6 months or 12 months.
Yeah.
Do you think she knows what she's doing and she's playing a long game?
I don't know. I suspect. Well, I have absolutely no idea. She will have access to free legal advice that I don't have access to. So I've contacted various organisations in Hammersmith and Fulham that offer, because I don't have that much money that I can start paying for lawyers. I've obviously had to do it, but I've had to do that using debt. But they won't help me because I'm a landlord, not a tenant, despite me being a tenant here.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So what happens if you just stop paying your rent there? It's a vicious circle, isn't it?
So the answer to that is not a lot. So what? The consequences of not doing so is that I will struggle to rent again because I wouldn't get a reference and things like that. And the more serious consequence is that at a certain point she's got a county court judgment against her name because of this, but I don't think she cares. Because the consequence of that is that you can't get a mortgage, you can't rent. There's various difficult things to do. Me, as somebody who seeks to fulfill all of my financial obligations, that would be a problem for me. Yeah. It seems like it's not a problem for her. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, just living on the fringe. I mean, are there children involved?
No.
No, so she's there on her own?
Yeah.
Okay, so and I am not offering you any advice on this, but I mean, it must have crossed your mind. I just go around there, I open the door, I turf her out and I change the locks.
Yeah, if I had £1 for every time someone suggested that to me, this wouldn't be a problem. That's not a possibility. I would get into a lot of trouble.
So then you'd be in trouble for evicting her for not paying her rent in your property that you own, that you have a financial commitment to maintain.
Correct.
So what happens if you can't pay your mortgage and the bank then want to reclaim the property from you?
That would be interesting. I don't know. But I'm going to pay my mortgage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will. Yeah. All the obligations I have, I will meet. But it's not easy.
Is this widespread? Is this happening across the country?
I suspect so, based on the delays in the courts, right?
Right.
It's not uncommon, is what I understand. Like once I've started raising this with people and talking to people about it, you hear about it more and more. I've got friends and colleagues who have had similar situations. Nobody seems quite as bad as mine because they've always been rental properties, whereas this is my actual property. But yeah, it seems relatively common.
And, I still don't understand. From earlier, you said you replacing a washing machine. Yeah. Why would you do that?
Because you still have obligations as a landlord, right? So I've had to pay for she's not paying me, but I still have to pay for the fire safety inspection, the gas safety inspection. And if there are things that are wrong with the flat, I have to fix them. And so I do. Basically I don't want to present to the tenant any excuse to present me as a bad landlord. So I'm filling every single obligation on me as a landlord. That's just what I'm going to be doing.
I mean, this just strikes me as utter madness. You've done everything you can by the book. I mean, the contracts aren't anything. They're a waste of time. What's the point in signing one?
Well, they're not a waste of time if they're between two people who will fulfill the obligations contained within that contract. They're not once somebody decides that the consequences of not following these things have no teeth, because that's ultimately what I've found. She's been presented by the court. Well, I have an order of possession telling her to vacate by the 22nd of February. She has decided that the consequences of not following that don't bother her for whatever reason.
Yeah, it seems like to me she's just playing a game. She knows exactly what her rights are, or someone's advising her on what you can and can't do.
Yeah, I mean, that either she's getting very, very good advice, or she's extremely well versed in property law.
Yeah. Look, I mean, now you've got local MPs, press. I mean, anyone coming to your support?
No. So there's a long list of people I've contacted. I won't name names, but I contacted my local MP in Hammersmith and Fulham. I contacted my local MP here in the place I rent is out in Surrey, because I can't afford to live in London anymore. Everybody expresses sympathy, but it's not to help because it's a court. Nobody can get involved with the courts. Understood. I've been put in contact with the Undersecretary of State for Housing. Basically, I got a response, but it was sympathetic, but ultimately generic, and it points me towards things like Citizens Advice Bureau. It's like, come on, I know that exists.
Yeah.
I contacted the council. So I contacted Hammersmith and Fulham Council to say, hey, for a start, this woman is engaging in antisocial behaviour. I've got complaints from neighbours. You're telling me as the landlord to control this. I have no control over this. I then contacted them when it became clear that she was being advised to stay put despite the order of possession. And they just said, we can't help you there. So yeah, there's no emergency mechanism for this situation. I feel like there should be for this situation. I know that people don't particularly have sympathy for landlords, but in my case, I am being driven to essential insolvency because the system is unable to help. The court it is impossible to contact the court directly. You have to contact the National Help Centre, and all you can get are facts from them about where things are. Everything from the court to me is posted, which is ridiculous because it takes forever. And I complained about the error that the court made in terms of telling us it was in Brentford and then finding out it was in Wandsworth. And that complaint was not upheld. So I went up to the top. I went through 3 stages of complaint to His Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service, and they ultimately just said, no, there was no delay. Our error did not cause a delay. And that was it.
I know, you and I had a brief conversation about a week ago on the phone, and it didn't seem right and reasonable there. And I know that we have to have laws in place to protect us from bad landlords. I don't think anyone's disagreeing on that. But it sounds to me like these are now being exploited by bad tenants, which is going to reduce our rental market because, I mean, once you've got this flat back, there's no way you're going to rent it out again, are you?
Yeah. Not a chance. I will sell it immediately. No. I'm going to make an enormous loss on it. So I bought it in summer of 2020. So that's peak of the COVID housing boom. So lucky me, it's going to be worth a good 15 to 20% less than what I paid for it.
Can't you start selling it now?
Not with a tenant in situ, no. Nobody wants to.
Utter madness. Apart from the stress and the finance, what impact has this had on your life?
Yeah, I mean, apart from the stress, the stress is the main part. It's basically I've been in a case of state of almost constant stress for the last 18 months or so. Yeah, financially, it's just been ruinous. Like I'm not going to pretend I'm on the breadline. I've made things work, primarily through borrowing money. Ultimately, this has wiped out all the deposit that I put into that. The combination of the debt that I'll have to repay plus the loss in value of the flat, which that's neither here nor there because that's going to have happened to everybody. Those combined means that the deposit I put down on the flat is basically gone.
Richard, I just don't know. I mean, it's hard to believe, but I'm not saying I'm doubting you in any way. It's just, laws are there to protect people, not to be exploited. And I have absolutely no advice and nowhere to point you, which I suspect is what most people say.
The only advice that you can get really is by paying for lawyers. In my experience has been that they don't really know what to suggest because ultimately this is just an issue with the courts. The courts are just so backed up. So I'm unable. My ability to get my flat back should be protected by the courts, and it is, but it's going to happen at the earliest in June, right? And so in my mind that's not good enough. Maybe there's more serious cases that need to be taken care of, but this is pretty serious to me. And the frustration, I am frustrated with the council. I completely understand everybody I've approached for help. I understand they can't get involved with courts, but the council could end this tomorrow by saying to her, hey, we will house you tomorrow.
Yeah.
you leave that flat. They're going to have to house her sooner or later. As a taxpayer, I'm furious that she will receive state-funded housing in the most expensive part of the country, but that's the system. Here we are. So yeah, it's very difficult to see any positives from it. Well, there are no positives from this, but it's very difficult to feel like I've been protected at all from this.
How old is this woman, and is she working?
She's in her 60s. She's not working now, so she's initially she was paying rent. She then sort of started paying now and again, and now she does not pay at all. And her excuse for that is that she's had health issues. That could well be true. I've had videos from neighbours of her walking around looking fine using their bins, and that obviously disabilities can be hidden, etc. So no, she's not working. And she emailed and texted me when the order of possession came through to say that I'm A, harassing her, and B, not I can't remember the wording, but basically to say I'm a disabled person and I will seek legal advice to take action against you on this basis. Now, I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure she's just trying to scare me, but still not very nice to read.
Richard, my heart goes out to you. You're behaving like an absolute gent, and that's a credit to you. You know, you're paying your way, making your way in the world, and you've not gone round there and physically removed her. Please keep us updated and let us know and stay in contact. And let us know how, in the meantime, all I can say is stay strong, my friend. And I genuinely mean that.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. What's interesting, I think, is that there's nobody who I've described this situation to who has come down anything other than this is ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think any reasonable person would think this is ridiculous. I'd be fascinated to hear from somebody who thinks this is the system operating as it should be. I genuinely would, because I would like to hear a justification for it. Yeah. Your reaction is the reaction I tend to hear.
Well, if anyone does disagree with our reaction and Richard's outlet, please use the comments field. Let's get a conversation going. And if anyone out there has any advice or guidance that they can offer Richard, please, because whenever a system is exploited in the way, be it housing or the legal system, when it's exploited in this way, it impacts us all. Richard, thank you very much indeed for giving up your time on this Sunday. Stay strong. And if there's anything we could do, please let us know. And if I hear from anyone with anything who's got any advice, I will pass them your way. Thank you again, Richard.